Good day and welcome to this week's edition of Tourismus Namibia, our show where we bring you topics and obviously have a couple of destinations ready for you, and then at the end of the day we'll also have a theme under To The Point. Now today under topics we'll talk a bit about In Situ Leaching. If we look at the past week, there was a bit of an awareness campaign, it almost seemed, in Stampriet and Leonardville by the proponents who want to explore for uranium down in that area. And then secondly, we're looking at game, which seems to be much more adaptable to climate change than we expected. And then also, finally, we'll look at rhino dehorning. So rhino dehorning, quite a controversial subject always, but in this case it does seem to make sense. Under destinations, we'll visit the Bäckerei Willi Probst in Walvis Bay. They're 65 years old. And then we'll switch over to Gross Barmen. One of my colleagues visited Gross Barmen, which is obviously a very nice site outside Okahandja. And then finally, under To The Point, we today look at the Makgadikgadi Park in Botswana. So we've got quite a nice little lineup for you. Obviously, Makgadikgadi is done under 10 degrees south, which we always specialize on the African countries which are adjacent to Namibia. Right, and that's it. As you can see on the screen there, my name is Frank Steffen. I'm the editor of the Allgemeine Zeitung and then obviously responsible for Tourismus Namibia at Namibia Media Holdings. So up next, we've got topics. Yeah, welcome back. And obviously we've been telling you on more than one occasion about the in situ leaching that is planned for in the area of the Stampriet Artesian Basin. As you can see here on the map, it's quite a wide area and it crosses into Botswana as well. So clearly it's Leonardville and Aranos and Stampriet that are the main areas. You can see the Alp River and all those going down here. It's also very clear. It's obviously artesian water, some of the finest in the world, according to UNESCO. And it stretches over into Botswana. Here you can see, this is a graph that I got a while back already, and it clearly shows how the water flows. And it has a sort of southeasterly direction going into the Kalahari, deeper into the Kalahari, I must say. That's on the Botswana side, going further down to South Africa, and finally catching up with the Orange River right down in the south. So some of the stuff is obviously subterranean, but the fact is it's water that doesn't only affect us. So if we waste it, it's not only a cause for us, it's also a cause of concern for Botswana and South Africa. And the problem is that this week, and I mean this is always the easiest way of solving a problem for somebody who is controversial, it seems. So quickly this was now turned into a racial argument. Because the farmers had organized a petition and quite a number of businessmen had joined in, and I must say also local folk in the Kalahari area. But then obviously the proponents, in this case Headspring Investments, which is a company owned by Rosatom, which is obviously known for its nuclear nuclear energy in Russia. So they're quick to point out, yes, but it's only those white guys who have a problem. And I think that's a bit idiotic. We should start learning in Namibia to actually apply our Environmental Act and that should be the only way in which we approach these things. Leave your racial arguments outside. This is about fact. We need facts on the table. We need to be able to ascertain that they're, number one, true, and number two, that we do our best to maintain our country. No more, no less. So it's a bit nonsense, especially as you find, I spoke to a Herero colleague of mine, and in Amanuis, which is the Herero Reserve right next to it, you could actually distinguish it on one of the maps just now. In there, the Oshiherero farmers are worried as well. There are quite a number of people who, there you can see it on the map right on the top there, that yellow area, that's Amanuis, and clearly they're affected as well. And Headspring Investments has started to drill holes there as well. Apparently there are more than 600 boreholes that have been drilled already. So if we look at the first video, you see one of the farmers who's quite agitated. Just have a look.
Hierdie affære gaan vir een of twee ouens voordele nou, maar die totale gemeenskap, ons ouens wat van die grond afhanklik is, wat wil boer, ons het geen voordeel daar nie. Hierdie manne haal die raan uit en dan gaan hulle weg. Daar's ouens wat van hulle getoets het hulle vir 3 weke lank daai swart modder sluk, het hulle uitkom. Hulle het gesê, nou wat gaan daar gebeur? Hulle het gesê, okay, hulle gaan teruggaan en kyk. Daai ons het nooit weer teruggaan nie. As hulle klaar daai gat geboor het, dan maak hulle hom toe en hulle gaan weg. Hulle kom nie weer terug nie. Al die ouens wat die dag daar gesit het 40 jaar ondervinding daar gesit. Hy het by gewees. Nou die helfte van die ouens wat daar gesit het, is eers 40 jaar oud. Nou dit wat hy vorige man gesê, van ons is ons gebore en ek sê altyd, ons is wise gebore. Ons word nie in 'n stad gebore met rook en sulke goed nie. Ons is nie op hulle gebore. Ons kan iets sien as jy dit sien aankom. Hulle sit hierdie goed hier op 'n goed en oornag, dan moet jy sommer 'n besluit maak en dan moet jy vinnig kom injaag en ons het 'n lewe en ons het 'n werk en ons het alles. Ons kan nie almal by mekaar kom nie. Hier staan hulle vandag, hier zijn 2 manne. Waar wil hulle hierdie gate boor? Het hulle vir ons plekke gesê, hulle wil hom hier en daar in Douwele boor. Is daar plekke? Nee. Hulle wys daar so 'n mooi plekkie van 'n blommetjie en 'n blou. As hulle hier gekom het, is dit klaar. Ek dink die wêreld het so iets soos 8 of 9 woestyne. Hoeveel woestyne is vandag in die wêreld? Ek dink 2.
Yeah, it's obviously in the Afrikaans language, but the gist of it is that this man says we have to create a living in this area. If you waste our groundwater, we've got no chance to raise any cattle or sheep or whatever, livestock in general. There's no basis on which we can continue farming, and this is one of the more important farming areas for Namibia in every no matter what you look at, whether it's small livestock or in Stampriet's case, you've got quite a lot of fresh produce that comes from that area. So this is a great concern, and he obviously is worried because as far as the farmers are concerned, there is already first evidence that simply by exploring there have been incidents where the water is now starting to have been poisoned. And it was subsequent to those sort of discussions that one of the local politicians, I must say council members, suddenly came out and said, no, but it's only the white farmers and they're only worried that their farms will be taken over and I don't know what else. And yet there was a politician there as well. It was Nico Smit. He's a parliamentarian and a member of the Popular Democratic Movement, PDM, which is the official opposition party. And he had this to say.
Here today just proves that the community at large are very much against the exploration as it's at the moment, and also very much against any mining of uranium in the aquifer. And I support their views. I think they have a lot of reason to be worried about the future, especially of the water. Because if you take what happened 2 weeks ago in Europe with the Oder River, running through Poland, Germany, Czech Republic, where it was contaminated with mercury. And that river melts into the Baltic Sea. All fish in that river died. The water in that river can't be used even for agricultural purposes. All agriculture along that river came to a standstill. Poland, Germany, and thousands, if not millions of people are dependent on the water of that river. So what is going to happen there? Only the future will tell us. Now, if the same happens here, and if you take there's already contamination in the water here, they have said it here and we know it. Contamination. Now, where does that contamination comes from? It's from the drilling that they've done so far in these 600 boreholes. They didn't seal those boreholes properly to prevent that it's leaking. It's leaking, it's contaminated. Now, we don't know to what extent the water has been contaminated. And that is a serious worry. Like one of the gentlemen said here, are we already drinking water that's been contaminated with uranium? And the uranium is just as bad as mercury. There's no difference, even maybe more dangerous. So I support fully the standpoint of the people here. I think it's right. And from my side, I will, again, because I started this thing in Parliament by asking questions to the Minister of Agriculture, and on grounds of my questions and my queries, he stopped the drilling of these boreholes. Up till today, it's been stopped. They are not allowed. Now they want to come into the back door to restart it again. But
yeah, as you can see there, clearly there's still a lot to be talked about, but the fact is that there seems to be an increasing tendency to move away from this sort of exploration. And I truly hope that the government is starting to take real action and simply stopping it right now. Because a while back already, the Minister for Agriculture, Kalish Lettwein, obviously withdrew the permits to continue with drilling. But I think this thing needs to be settled once and for all. It's like Dr. Roy Miller said a couple of times already, if we think Recon Africa is a bad news story, just remember this one is 3 times worse. So anyway, that's the one topic we've got for today, where we've got another, adaptability of animals and game. And this is quite an interesting thing. The ability of wild animals to adapt to new conditions is greater than thought. That's at least the finding of a new study by the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research, which recently appeared in the journal Science. A team of 40 researchers from something like 27 institutions led by Dr. Timothy Bonnet, he's of the Australia National University, studied how much evolutionary potential exists in wildlife worldwide. So many populations can evolve at an astonishing rate. That's their finding. Their genetic difference in ability to survive and reproduce is 2 to 4 times greater than previously thought. And this is obviously good news. This was one of the proponents that they looked at. They looked at the hyenas, who were especially adaptable, because what you find is that the hyena has always been seen as one of the animals which is more adaptable, but this was obviously then confirmed. And there are many of these articles around, and what's interesting about it is in their finding that they warn that should not be a cause to think that these animals are suddenly not endangered by climate change anymore, because at the end of the day we still need to stop this. Simply because they're more adaptable than thought doesn't make it a situation where they can in fact survive if it goes on at the current trend. What they're just saying is, for the moment, it's not as serious as we thought it would be, but beware, these animals will still not be able to all in all change fast enough, so there's a huge amount of concern still left. So anyway, that's that one. And then we've got dehorning of rhino. And remember, this has been an issue before. I mean, years ago, when South Africa had no choice left anymore, they started dehorning rhino. And if you look at these photos here, you can clearly see this is not, this is what I would in fact call a controversial site. But anyway, that's the wildlife vets in Namibia, and they decide, no, at the moment with our rhinos suddenly being shot one after the other, I must say, poached one after the other. We've had a whole lot of news about this in the past couple of weeks. So at least they've now dehorned 6 white rhinos in the past week or so, and this is all part of an initiative by the Rhino Mama project. So the project aims to protect and repopulate rhinos in southern Africa, so it's not only about Namibia, and as part of its mission regularly performs dehorning. So wildlife vets shared their spectacular photo of the dehorning on social media. But they did express concern over the lack of protection for the animals. And they were quoted as saying, a lot of money is being raised and many anti-poaching techniques are being used, and yet we're fighting a losing battle. And that's a sad story. Let's face it, at the end of the day, we want to drive around in our wildlife and reserves and national parks and have a look at rhinos in exactly the way that nature has them, and not as a dehorned object simply. I mean, I do agree, if that's the only way how we can save them, then that's what we need to do. But I would prefer that we are able to simply look after our animals and make sure, I don't want to say shoot the poachers, but if I have to have the choice between shooting a poacher or a rhino, I know what my choice would be. It's up to you to make up yours. I know this is quite a controversial statement to make, but that's those are our topics for today. Up next is destinations.
You know, a few weeks ago, I would never do this on a Saturday morning. Back then, I was standing in line all day. Now it's just like that.
You are using the FNB banking app like I told you.
Girl, it saved my weekend. Now I can do all my banking on this.
Payments, transfers, checking statements.
Even opening accounts.
Just like that.
Oh, did I tell you what my husband did?
Even me, I want to save time with the, what's the name of the app?
FNB app.
Don't be left behind. Make the switch to the FNB app, online banking or cell phone banking, and change the way you bank to change your life. FNB, how can we help you?
Yeah, welcome back. Destinations it is. And this week we've got something special for you, simply because they've just turned 65 years. And as we're speaking, they're probably dishing out some fine product and actually having a good party in Walvis Bay. Bäckerei Willi Probst, obviously being a bakery. And it's a case of Fred and Astrid Detlefs. They appear on one of those photos later on. But this is a family business that was started by the great-grandfather and great-grandmother of Daniela Jansen van Vuren. Here on the photo, if we can hold on that photo for a moment there. So on the left here, you see Fred and his wife Astrid Detlefs with son Sven Detlefs. And then son-in-law Marco Jansen van Vuren with his wife Daniela, who's the daughter of Fred and Astrid. So they're sort of the second and third generation already. Like I said, it was the great-grandparents who started with that business. And it's being currently run alongside between Daniela, right on the right-hand side there, and Marco, her husband, with the parents right on the left. So yeah, we can have a look at more of those photos as we go on now. But they've taken the reins over from their parents basically, but the parents still remain pretty much involved in the business. So what really happened is Willi Senior and Mary Probst opened Probst Bakery in August 1957 after moving from Germany to Namibia. So as she's being quoted, Daniela that is, my grandfather had followed his father's footsteps and became a qualified baker and confectioner too. So in 1960, my grandparents, Willi Probst Jr. and his wife Lieselotte, also fondly known as Lilo, bought the business from the great-grandparents. Over the years, they had renovated, expanded, and managed the family business. So keeping it in the family, Daniela's mother and father, Fred and Astrid, as we explained just now, took over the business in 2002. So actually it's not the second. Fred and them are already the third generation. And anyway, so both are still running, actively involved in the running of the business. My husband and I joined our parents in the business and are still very much under training. This is Daniela saying that. This is obviously the team that's working under them. And she says, my brother Willie deadlifts is currently in Windhoek, while Sven deadlifts, obviously the one that we saw on the photo. My younger brother also assists us in the business. So this is quite a nice little story there. Probst Bäckerei, for most people in Walvis Bay, well known. I think there's hardly anybody there who doesn't know them. People who go to Walvis Bay, I can truly tell you it's a nice place to go to, and I've stopped over there on many an occasion. Yeah, right. And then on the, we obviously have a video for you. I almost forgot to show you. Have a look.
The cafe started 65 years ago. It was Daniela's great-grandfather. He made a decision to come to Southwest Africa in those days, and it was just after the World War, and Germany was struggling, and there was new opportunities on the horizon, and basically that ended up in Africa. And yeah, first was in Swakopmund, where they landed, where I think most people landed from the German side of the world. And yeah, 2 years he worked there. He started to establish the ground in Walvis Bay, and took him about 2 years to build up. So in 1955 they started off, and 1957 he opened his doors. And yeah, his wife, we call her Oma Mary, she was then summoned to say, bring your son and come join, and that's where it all started in 1957. 65 years later, here we are.
Most of the recipes are still the same. You know, when you have something that works, you try and stick to it. But so most recipes are still the same. We do have new ones. My mom's always out looking for new recipes, or let's try this, and you work on the feedback that you get from the clients. So you build up a database, and we can't share any recipes, unfortunately, because that is a house secret. We have friends also that ask, you know, can't you share us the recipe of this? And unfortunately, no, it's a secret. But yes, the Bridget's recipe is still from my great-grandparents' time, and it hasn't changed over the years, even though the ingredients sometimes get a bit tricky, because that does change over the years. But no, it's still the same. Well, Probst is your German cafe, you know, still a lot from the old era, if I can put it that way. There's a lot still the old system, so we don't have new technology bases on everything. So the backside, you know, when we do orders and stuff, it gets written with hand, and you know, so but what we offer is the German tradition in it with Namibian infused, and we have coffee and cake, and what is most famous, I think, is the Bridget's with various toppings. So even if you thought you're coming in for a cheese Bridget, you're definitely going to have a variety to make you doubt whether you wanted a cheese Bridget. But that's our basic standard. And we have our Schwarzwälder Kirsch cake, which is the Black Forest cake, and our baked cheesecake, and yeah, just the vibrant atmosphere that goes with it. So.
Yeah, so over the time, especially with the COVID times, we've also changed our scene a little bit, bringing in a deli, and through the deli there's also a few exciting products that's available. We're doing pizzas on the side, which we basically do for our restaurant, and that's something new that we've added on over the COVID time. And yeah, we've seen more people, more interest, and yeah, but we still stand for the German cuisine, and yeah, absolutely the best part of it.
You know, so we always, everybody dreams, you know, and we'd love to keep it in the generation to be able to, you know, when one day my parents say, okay, they've had enough and, you know, they pass it on, then it's our generation, and then we'd love to give it on to the next generation, which is a huge privilege. So we hope it can stay that way. Specific plans, as in, you know, a lot of people ask us for franchising things. We're not in that. We'd like to keep it unique, and we'll just take it as the Lord guides us. Because we can plan our plans, but what He's planning, you know. So.
Yep. Really not about us. It's about those that have supported Willi Probst over the last 65 years. And that's just something big. And, you know, maybe those people not around anymore, but their generations on, their children are here, and the stories can be told. And for us, that's special.
So it's really, we just want to say thank you. So in a moment like this, it's a milestone for us, but it's also a milestone for the town. And we definitely want to celebrate that together and say thank you. You know, thank you for being here. Thank you for growing up with us and for teaching us things, you know. So yeah, it's really, just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and that was Probst Bakery, just a video, just them telling us what it's all about themselves. So up next, we've got Gross Barmen. One of my colleagues, Jemima Beekers, visited Gross Barmen. Here you can see it. So if you take the road from Windhoek to Okahandja, and then you have to turn off left, but not taking the road to Karibib, but instead drive to Gross Barmen. The next picture actually shows it in a much better format. And then what I've done is I've also drawn up this little map just to show you from the airport close to Windhoek up to Gross Barmen. Takes you about, let's say, 2 hours at best, which is actually quite nice. If you are a new arrival in Namibia, or you want to stay over for one last night before leaving the country, this might actually be quite a nice little address. So Gross Barmen is a recreational spa adjacent to the Swakop River, north of Windhoek, and it is situated along that district road 1972 that we showed you earlier, 25 kilometers southwest of Okahandja in the Otjimbingwe region. And so originally it was known as Oshikango, meaning large fountain, and that's what it's all about. Gross Barmen is obviously a spa because of the warm weather there. In the language of the Oshirero, that is translated into large fountain at least, and the site was originally inhabited by the Ovaherero people. So when Wesleyan missionaries arrived in Windhoek in 1844, so that's a long time ago, at the invitation of Jonker Afrikaner, who's obviously was the leader of the Nama, Rhenish missionaries Karl Hugo Hahn and Franz Heinrich Kleinschmidt, already resident there since 1842, feared conflict and moved on to Oshikango. Here they established the first Rhenish mission station to the Herero in late 1844, and they named the place Barmen after the town Barmen, today part of Wuppertal in Germany, where the headquarters of the Rhenish Missionary Society was located. So the ruins of the missionary's house are still visible there today, by the way. Hahn and Kleinschmidt initiated the creation of a path from Windhoek to Barmen via Okahandja, and in 1850 this road, later known as Alta Baiweg, which means as much as Old Bay Road, was extended via Otjimbingwe to Walvis Bay. This route developed into an important trade connection between the coast and Windhoek and was in use until 1900, when the railway line from Swakop was commissioned. Now, I remember as a young boy, Boy Scout in fact, we actually marched along that Old Baiweg or Bay Road. I think there were quite a number of these so-called Baiweg, because it always depended which road you took to Walvis Bay. But anyway, here's a video that Jemima prepared for us.
Welcome to Gross Barmen. Gross Barmen is a recreation area now. It's a resort. I would love to point out my favorite people who had a big influence on the establishment of the Gross Barmen. Historically speaking, we have younger Africans, that's the historic there. We have the Mahari Rock, we have Kauhun, and in the area, Age, Ketting, and the three has been always interaction at this center because there was always water, and because when they're herding their livestock, this is where they gather, this is where they feed the animals with grazing and also water to drink, and the settlement was always in the surrounding until the missionaries arrived here in the 18th centuries. The first missionaries to arrive here, the Rhenish missionaries, was Mr. Carl Hugohun. I hope I'm pronouncing the words nicely, and the history talk about Carl Hugohun here at Gross Barmen. Welcome at the thermal bath. It is on the direction here. I will show you later. The main attraction for people that comes here how I say the word, and enjoy and recreate. And most of the important aspect about thermal is that it's a referral by doctors. So the water is naturally heated by God, and therefore we mix this water. It comes from deeper, 2.5 kilometers underground. When it reaches the surface about 65 degrees, we regulate it into that thermal bath, reach 40 degrees. The body is about 37 and so. 40 is too hot, and it can allow you to stay in for inside the pool 30 minutes. And then you get out, chill again, and sometimes it's also with how your doctor prescribed your activities to be in that thermal bath. Barmen is prone to drought, and it's also favorable when the floods comes. So it's a give and take. So as the area of Windhoek as well. So you see that we have introduced a springboks here. When the years were good and the grazing was good and Windhoek was affected, that State House had some wildlife, and the majority of animals there were springboks, and they were actually starving because the grazing was minimal. And so they took 12 springboks and they redeployed them at Gross Barmen, and they're doing very well. Some of them are eaten by the dogs already, the outside farmers, because the animals do not want to be crowding there, and that's why we have these springboks here. The number have grown to 30, over 30, and even though we have lost some of them to the neighboring farms, there's still a very good number of springbok. When you move around, you will not get in contact with them. However, they will still treat you as a human, and they treat themselves as a wild animal. That this place has natural spring, that's water is life, and that there was no other animals, the grazing was still perfect. And that's why we took a number of springboks to reintroduce them to Gross.
Yeah, and that's Gross Barmen for you. I think most people enjoy Gross Barmen, and like I said, it's not too far away from Windhoek, where the result is quite a lot of local folk love going there on weekends or during holidays. And then now in winter time, it's especially nice because of its warm water, obviously. Right, and those were our destinations today. Up next is To The Point. Yeah, time and again we speak of 10 degrees south, and that's obviously trying to introduce our southern neighbors to you as well, because we strongly believe that as Namibia, we can obviously be the point of entry into Southern Africa. And so if you've been to Sossusvlei and you've been to Etosha and you've been to Koukerveld and you feel, I still want to go back once more, but I want to see different addresses as well. Well, we've introduced the eastern side on a couple of occasions where we've taken you basically along the border from Gobabis right up to Kaudum and Okavango. But then we've also often introduced the Kalahari to you. So if you go past Gobabis, then you can go sort of up the road again and go to the Makgadikgadi Pans. And that's actually a national park that we can see there, very close to the Okavango Delta, as you can see. If we look at the next map, you can actually see that it is a national park. So it's obviously the Makgadikgadi Pans and National Park, but then you've also got the Nxai Pan National Park just up there. You can't really read it probably on your phone if you're looking there, but it's just up from where I inserted the description. So anyway, imagine a landscape the size of Portugal, because this is what we're talking of, with few humans and stark flat terrain stretching to eternity, fusing with a distant horizon. This is the Makgadikgadi, an area of 12,000 square kilometers. Part of the Kalahari Basin, yet unique, being home to one of the world's largest salt pans. Most of the year, this desolate area remains waterless and extremely arid, with large mammals all but absent. However, in years of good rain and the years that follow, the two largest pans, Sowa to the east and Twetwe to the west, flood, attracting wildlife, zebra and wildebeest on the grassy plains, and most spectacularly flamingos at Sowa and Nata Sanctuary. Flamingo numbers can run into the tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands, and the spectacle can be completely overwhelming. So the rainwater arrives in massive downpours in summer months and longer spells in February and March, swelling the Nata, Tutume, Semowane and Mosetse rivers in the east, and in years of exceptional rains, the Okavango via the Puteti River in the west. So the Okavango literally spills over into this area then. During these periods, the pans are transformed into vast powder blue lakes, a reminder of the gigantic prehistoric lake of the Makgadikgadi that it was once was. Sorry for that. Africa's most famous explorer, Dr. David Livingstone, crossed these pans in the 19th century, guided by a massive baobab tree. It's also known as the Chapman's tree, the only landmark for hundreds of miles around. This ancient specimen is believed to be 3,000 to 4,000 years old. So it's a very, very nice place. Here you can clearly see abundant game. And so let's have a look at the video.
You would be excused for thinking you had landed on the moon when you first arrived at the Makgadikgadi salt pans. Made up of the Makgadikgadi pan, the Nxai pan and the Suwa pan, the Makgadikgadi salt pans are all that remain of an ancient great central Botswana lake. The Makgadikgadi Salt Pans region offers a host of fascinating activities, expanding considerably on the conventional safari experience. The white lunar expanse of the salt pans is brought to life by the annual rains, which bring forth nourishing grasses to support the last surviving migration of zebra and wildebeest in southern Africa. This massive influx of plains game is accompanied by an entourage of predators, and in good years, spectacular breeding colonies of flamingos crowd the shallow waters of Suwa Pan. During the dry months, the plains are barren. Untouched and seemingly devoid of any life, the endless Makgadikgadi salt pans rival any of nature's most awe-inspiring environmental displays. The Makgadikgadi Pans is a place like none other. Mile upon mile of shimmering white salt pan stretches endlessly to the horizon. These blinding white sand flats are all that remain of a vast inland lake that occupied a large part of central Botswana several million years ago. So in some ways, these pans can be seen as precursors of the Okahandja Delta, and some would say an indication of what those swamps are destined to become if the region's climate continues to become more arid. 7 huge gnarled baobab trees, named after the 19th century explorer Thomas Baines, are situated on a promontory or island overlooking and surrounded by the white crusty Kudai pan. Baines stood here over 100 years ago and painted this overworldly scene. It has essentially remained unchanged. Camping out on the Makgadikgadi Pans is an experience never to be forgotten. Sleeping in lightweight net tents under the most enormous and star-covered sky imaginable, and whether you stay in the dry or rainy season, they both offer a unique Makgadikgadi experience. You will have the opportunity to quad bike across the salt pan, explore Makgadikgadi, immerse yourself in Botswana.
Right, and that was the video of Makgadikgadi. Just an introduction, by the way, as you could see on the credits, the video I got from the Botswana Tourism Organization. And clearly, if you want to see something different, and even if you're just a Namibian who wants to do something different, why not go there? Because I think generally the national parks of Botswana, in terms of how they're organized, in terms of the number of animals, it's very similar to Namibia. So it might just be a change of scenery, as a different holiday. That's what this program is all about, trying to introduce you not only to Namibian but Southern Africa as a whole. But please note, always make a turn here as well. So either start here or plan your route to come via Namibia, because I'm sure we can spoil you. Yeah, and that brings us to the end of this show of this week, and I hope you enjoyed what we brought you. We'll be seeing each other again next week at the same time, same place. Until then, remain healthy, look after yourself. Bye.